Hey guys, Extrasify here. Welcome back to another video. Now, this is going to be a little unusual to some of the other videos I show you guys. I thought it would be interesting to do a tier list video ranking all of the best dungeon farms for transmog and items and just best gold farms via dungeons. And I basically added as many dungeons as I could think of as solid gold farms. And I'm going to tier list them. You guys have probably seen this same structure before on YouTube. And yeah, I figured let's go ahead and go in. So I have 22 of the top dungeons for gold farming that I could think of. So with that being said, let's go ahead and start with the first one, that is Sunwell Plateau. Now, I mean, you guys know how much I love Sunwell. This is easily going into the S tier. Let's not even waste time. There's countless amazing patterns that are Sunwell drops only, and overall it's just one of my absolute favorite dungeons to farm, so really can't go wrong putting Sunwell at the S tier, of course. Alright, and then next up on the list, this is Dratheon Keep in Northrend. This is actually surprisingly a very solid farm. There are a ton of great drops in Wrath of the Lich King that are worth a absolute ton of gold, and not a lot of people are farming them. But in terms of the sale rates on Wrath of the Lich King items are a bit low, and the main things you want to be looking for are like shields, weapons, and most importantly the bows. Like the Astral Light bow is a unique example. You can easily sell that for over 100,000 gold if you get it, which you can get it from Dratheon Keep. Very solid dungeon. It's good for like filling out your auction house. There's, you know, you can do 10 runs of Dratheon Keep and you'll get an absolute ton of items. Along with that, the runs are about 4 minutes each if you have a fast set, so definitely not too bad there. Overall, I think I'm going to slot it in at the A tier. Alright, and then next on the list we have Skolan. Now, Skolan, I'll be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of it. I know there are some decent sets in there, like the Chief Brigadier and like the Jazzeraint set, a few decent green sets. The BOE blues that you can get from this dungeon are really nice as well, and you have a chance for the elusive Skullflame shield. But overall, I think I'm going to put it in the B tier, as you don't really get a ton of expensive sets. And overall, it's just not one of the best dungeons. I have done a 50 runs of almost all of these dungeons, and I have the playlist on my channel if you want to check that out. But yeah, I wasn't overly impressed with Skolan in general. Coming up next, we have the absolutely super fun dungeon to farm. We got Uldaman. Oh gosh, what can I say about Uldaman? You have the absolute fun of the RNG in terms of the super items that you can get that are easily worth over 1 million gold if you get any of those items. On top of that, you have amazing patterns like the rich purple silk shirt pattern. You have the enchant shield lesser parry enchant, the searing golden blade, star belt patterns. I mean, there's absolutely a ton of great items to search for when farming Uldaman. And I mean, I could farm this dungeon for hours and hours and hours and not get bored of it. It's absolutely one of my favorite dungeons. Now, with that being said, in terms of gold making, you know, it's kind of unreliable. If you don't get a good drop in an hour's worth, a lot of the greens aren't worth a ton, and that's mostly due to over farming, as everyone loves to farm Uldaman. So with all that being said, I think I'm going to slot it in at the A tier, because it's just personally a huge favorite of mine. And then coming in next, we have the Black Fathom Deeps. Black Fathom Deeps is a great dungeon to farm when getting into transmog. You absolutely fill up your bags and your auction house with a ton of great value greens, as well as the fact that there are an absolute ton of BOE blues to look out for that are unique to the instance. Overall, I think Black Fathom Deeps is a really good farm, and I honestly feel like it's very underrated, as not many people farm it for some reason. I really don't know why. I feel like it doesn't get the love or appreciation that it deserves. So with that being said, highly recommended for newer transmog gold farmers. And with that being said, I'm going to put it actually in the A tier as well. Alright, coming up next we have a little bit of an unusual one, especially for myself as an Alliance player, but we have Ragefire Chasm. Now, Ragefire Chasm, you know, it's hard to farm as an Alliance player, but you can just dive bomb in from the sky if you go over to Orgrimmar. It's not super hard to get into as a max level character, but with that being said, the runs are super quick, probably no more than like 3 minutes a run. You have a lot of great lower level sets to look out for, such as the Grunt set, the Bloodstained set, the Outrunners set, the Aboriginal Loincloth is also a really high value item, and as well as the Ceremonial Leather Loincloth and the Ceremonial Leather Harness, which both of those are worth like over 20,000 gold easily. So I believe that Ragefire Chasm is pretty solid, but it's not really one of the top level in terms of transmog farming. There's definitely better, but if you want to try your luck and get some of those rare loincloths or the ceremonial set, go ahead and give it a shot. But with that being said, I'm going to slot it in at the B tier. Alright, coming in next we have the Blackrock Depths. Now I believe that the Blackrock Depths is pretty good. I think the main issue with Blackrock Depths is a lot of the greens that you find in this dungeon are not worth that much gold, to be honest. You do have a couple good sets like the Lord's set and the Elegant set, to name a couple, but aside from that, there's not a lot of other good sets from Blackrock Depths. However, Blackrock Depths actually has a solid amount of instant-specific BOE blue items, and those are actually worth quite a bit of gold, as not many people farm Blackrock Depths anymore. Along with that, you also have the Dark Iron Baby Booties, which I've shown and highlighted in my 50 runs of Blackrock Depths video. I'll have the playlist in the description for that if you guys want to check that out. But overall, there's definitely better dungeons, but you could get lucky and get a nice world drop or a nice BOE specific blue. So with that being said, I'm going to put Blackrock Depths in the B tier. And following that, we have the Gnomeregan dungeon. Now, Gnomeregan is amazing. Now, I will say the green transmog sets, nothing too great in terms of what you can expect. Although there are some nice sets. You have the Glimmering Mail set, you have the Silver Thread set, and on top of that, there are actually a lot of nice BOE blues that can drop from this dungeon, worth an awful lot of gold. On top of that, always make sure to kill the last boss in Gnomeregan, as he has a small chance of dropping a lot of expensive engineering patterns. Overall, Gnomeregan has been very nice to me in the past, and for that reason, as well as I just believe it's a pretty solid and slept on farm, I'm going to put Gnomeregan in the A tier. Now that might be a little controversial, but let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Coming up next, we have Lower Blackrock Depths. Now I'm personally not that big a fan of this farm, solely just because the runs take a while. Now, they take at least like 6 minutes a run with a speed set. Now, Lower Blackrock Depths actually has a very nice chance at the last boss to drop a blacksmithing pattern for the Arcanite Champion. And that Arcanite Champion pattern is very expensive, easily over 100,000 gold. So if you farm Lower Blackrock Depths, always make sure to kill the last boss. Now, in terms of the greens and blues, there's nothing really to stand out. I mean, you have some common sets similar to Blackrock Depths or Skolamance, you know, that similar gear bracket. Overall, I mean, there's nothing crazy about Lower Blackrock Depths besides some nice world drops and maybe a few sets. But overall, I'm just going to put it at the B tier. Coming in next, we have the Irondox dungeon. Now, I absolutely love the Irondox dungeon. I really believe that the Irondox is one of my favorite dungeons to farm. It's probably honestly like top 3. On top of the fact, if you have your garrison up to the level 2 trading post in your garrison, you have a chance of looting some auction module parts from any dungeon in Warlords of Draenor, and basically people will buy those. There's 3 different parts. They'll buy them so that they can have an auctioneer set up in their garrison, which some people want to have. And overall, it just adds gold to the farm, as you usually get about 2 modules in 10 runs, and each module sells for about 1,000 to 5,000 gold depending on your server. You also have the chance of getting amazing Warlords of Draenor world drops, most notably, of course, the Bulwark of Azeroth, which is absolutely one of the most expensive transmogs out there, as it's an amazing shield and you can easily fetch several 100,000 gold for it if you do get it. So I've always had great success in Irondox, and I believe that you guys can too, absolutely. So with that being said, it's gonna join Sunwell in the S tier. Coming up next, we have the Dire Maul. Now this is mainly talking about Dire Maul East, as Dire Maul North and West aren't really worth much gold at all. Dire Maul East is where you're going to be getting the most gold per hour in my experience. Now you can jump down, gather all the lashers and all the plants, and you get a ton of nice vanilla herbs that will supplement the gold. Along with that, you have chances of like Felcloth and the Essence of Water from killing the Hydra, the water boss at the bottom. And overall, you have some decent sets. Nothing really that crazy though. Usually, I've tried farming this before. I was gonna do a 50 runs episode of Dire Maul East, and I got about 30 runs in, and my total value for everything in my bags was like 62,000 gold. And it was just kind of like awful. And I farmed it in the past before. It wasn't like my first time farming Dire Maul East. But yeah, there was just not a lot of stuff worth saving, and it just really was very underwhelming. So I know you can get some nice materials for some steady farm, but overall I just didn't see the point in farming Dire Maul East that much. I definitely could have just had some bad RNG. But from my experience, I'm just going to put it at the C tier. Coming up next on the list, we have Razerfin Downs. Now, if you guys know me, watch this channel, you guys know that Razerfin Downs is one of my favorite dungeons to farm. There are so many amazing sets that you can get from here. Most notably, you have the Bloodforge set, the Saltstone set, Jade set, and along with that, it's similar to Uldaman in where you have the chance of getting like the Starbelt pattern, the Enchant Shield Lesser Parry, and the amazing tailoring pattern, the Rich Purple Silk Shirt, which all of those patterns easily go for over 100,000 gold to collectors. Overall, Razerfin Downs, I mean, I can do a 10-run session almost any time and never be disappointed. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and put Razerfin Downs at the S tier, as it's always done me well and it's one of my most recommended farms for new gold makers. And coming up next, we have Dratheon. Now Dratheon is pretty decent. It's more of a mix between some transmog and some steady material gold, as if you go the Dratheon live side and go to Balnazar, the last boss on the live side, you can have the chance of farming the Righteous Orbs and the Essence of Undeath, which each of those go for about 100 to 200 gold apiece, and in each run you get about 3 of them total, so it's really nice supplemental material gold. And on top of that, you have some really nice transmog sets as well. You have like the Ebonhold, the Elegant set, the Lord set, and on top of that you also have a few BOE blues that are very nice as well. So with that being said, I think Dratheon is a little bit slept on. I feel like people don't really give it the love that I believe it deserves. But with that being said, you know, sometimes it's not very nice to you, and the best thing you're taking from it is the Righteous Orbs and the Essence of Undeath. And it's just a very super RNG dungeon when it comes to that. So I'm going to go ahead and put it in the... should I do B or C tier? I'm going to play safe. I'll go B tier. But it definitely could fall into the C tier, honestly speaking. Coming up next, we have Zul'Farrak. Now, Zul'Farrak is probably the most well-known dungeon for farming transmog. Everyone really knows that Zul'Farrak is the go-to dungeon when you get into farming transmog. And I mean, I can't really see why I would disagree with that. Zul'Farrak has so many amazing sets that you can farm. You got the Glorious, Vanguard, Jade, Lofty, Bloodforged, the Impenetrable. I mean, there's so many awesome sets worth an absolute ton of gold. Now, the one caveat I'll say is that the zone drops are crap. But, you know, the transmog speaks for itself. But I will say there's definitely more supply than demand for a lot of these transmogs from Zul'Farrak, because if anyone is into transmog farming, one of their go-tos is probably Zul'Farrak. With that being said, I think it's still really good. It's really nice for loading out your auction house, and I definitely recommend it to any transmog farming people. So with that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and I believe, yeah, I'll put it in the A tier. Alright, coming up next we have the Wailing Caverns. Now the Wailing Caverns is really nice. You have the chance for the ceremonial leather set, which, like I was saying with Ragefire Chasm, is an absolute nice item to get, worth an absolute ton of gold. And you also have a chance of getting the Deviant Hatchling, which is a companion, and that can go for about 10k or so if you get that. And in 10 runs you usually get one, at least, maybe two if you're lucky. Overall, there's a ton of great sets from Wailing Caverns. I really recommend it, and not a lot of people farm the Wailing Caverns, so I was initially thinking B tier for Wailing Caverns, but the more I go on about it, I think it deserves A tier, honestly. Maybe I'm a little lenient with some of these rankings. I'm sure you guys will have other thoughts about how my rankings are, and that's okay. That's how tier lists go. But it could definitely be A or B tier, I believe. But I feel good about it being an A tier. Alright, coming up next we have Shadowfang Keep. Now, Shadowfang Keep is really fun to farm, I'll be honest, because not a lot of the green sets from Shadowfang Keep are that good. A couple exceptions. I mean, the main one that comes to mind is the Buccaneer's Vest, as that's a nice revealing transmog, and that one can easily go for several thousands of gold, even tens of thousands of gold. But aside from that, a lot of the greens, honestly, I just end up vendoring a lot of the time. Now, the main saving grace of Shadowfang Keep are the zone drops. You just have a plethora of very rare and very expensive BOE blues, which gives it some wiggle room. But overall, if you're farming Shadowfang Keep, the main things you're going for are the super rares, and honestly, you know, for consistent transmog farming, it's just very unreliable. So it's definitely a fun dungeon to farm, but I'm gonna throw it at the C tier, as in terms of making gold and getting great mogs, it's definitely not the right place for that. Alright, and coming up next we have the Sunken Temple. Now, the Sunken Temple is very much so a material slash transmog farm. I did 50 runs of this, obviously, and I will say it's not worth farming Sunken Temple if you do not have a Skinner character. So make sure you bring your Skinner when farming Sunken Temple. I can easily recommend that, as you get a ton of gold from the leather and the scales and all that. With that being said, a lot of the green sets here are not worth that much. It's decent, but it's not great, and you don't get that many in terms of like filling out your auction house. I'd say it's not the best place for that. However, there are a lot of nice BOE blues that drop here that are worth a lot of gold. But in my 50 runs at least, I felt like I definitely could have gotten more BOE blues. I felt like I was a bit unlucky with that, and maybe that's just, you know, the luck of the draw, but I felt like it definitely could have been better. However, the materials in all of my runs really makes up for it, and I think it pushes that from being a C tier dungeon to being a B tier dungeon. I think that's the proper placing for Sunken Temple. Alright, and next up we have the Hellfire Ramparts. Now, the Hellfire Ramparts really does not get the love that it deserves. This place is awesome due to the fact that there are a ton of amazing sets, and on top of that, the runs literally take like 2 to 3 minutes. It's so quick, so easy, and you can bang out like 10 runs in like 25 minutes, even if you don't have a speed set. It's about like 20 if you have a speed set. So overall, one of my favorite dungeons in terms of Outland. You have the chance for amazing epic patterns, you know, like Fellsteel Longblade, all that can drop in here. And there's a ton of nice sets to look out for here. So, is it A tier or S tier, man? God, it's definitely A tier. Is it S tier? It might be S tier. That might be a crazy choice. Shoot. I'll go S tier, why not? Y'all gotta let me know what do you think about that being S tier. But if you haven't farmed Hellfire Ramparts, highly recommended, man. That farm is amazing. And before farming it, I really didn't know what to expect before my 50 runs of that, but man, I was blown away, and I've been farming it ever since. Coming up next, we have Karazhan. Now, Karazhan is a classic in terms of farming TBC. You obviously have the chance, like with Hellfire Ramparts, you have the chance of getting the epic patterns, and you have some nice world drops as well. But with endgame TBC, the green transmog sets are practically all vendorable. None of them really have much value, and due to the fact that Sunwell has a bunch of Sunwell specific patterns that are also worth a lot of gold, there's really no reason to farm Karazhan, because the main thing you're looking out for is like trying your luck at epic patterns, you know. But why not go to Sunwell, where you have a chance of more patterns as the Sunwell patterns as well, and on top of the fact that the runs are a little bit quicker in Sunwell rather than in Karazhan. So while Karazhan, you know, many years ago, that was one of the favorites for farming. So while Karazhan many years ago, that was one of the popular TBC farms for epic patterns, you know, it's kind of just like a relic in the past, and no one really farms it anymore. Everyone just goes to Sunwell. Unfortunately, Karazhan, my friend, you have fallen off. And it pains me to put it here, because I used to farm this dungeon, or, well, I guess this raid, a whole lot. But I'm gonna put it in the C tier. It could easily go in the D tier, too. I'm being kind, guys. Yeah, there's really no point in farming Karazhan, but I figured I'd include it on the list, as you definitely can farm it, obviously. Alright, let's move on to the next one. So we have Mana Tombs next. Now, Mana Tombs is amazing. I absolutely love farming Mana Tombs. Make sure to farm Mana Tombs on a miner if you have it, so you have that extra chance of Corium. Now, even if it's just an adamantite deposit, I always mine that as well, as you have the chance for Eternium ore, and Eternium ore has some decent value as well, about 90 gold a piece. So that definitely helps, and you have 2 mining nodes per run of the dungeon. Make sure that you run it on Heroic, skipping all of the bosses, and go ahead and make sure you have the quest chain unlocked for the Ethereum prison keys. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you can do a quick Google search, but basically you just do a quick quest or 2 in Netherstorm, and that enables you to loot Ethereum prison keys. Now, these are a rep item for the Consortium faction, and you can easily farm up an absolute ton of these in Mana Tombs, and they sell on the region-wide materials auction house. They sell for about 50 to 100 gold each, so it's just really nice extra gold income while farming. You have some decent transmog greens as well, and you also have the chance for the epic patterns. So overall, Mana Tombs is a really nice dungeon, and for that, I'm going to put it at the A tier. Okay, coming up next, we have the Pit of Sauron. Now, Pit of Sauron is a classic dungeon everyone knows about farming for the amazing Battered Hilt, but let me just go over a couple other things to look out for if you're farming Pit of Sauron. Obviously, farm it on Heroic only, do not farm it on Normal, as the Battered Hilt does not drop on Normal, it only drops on Heroic. So obviously don't kill any bosses. And another thing to note is bring a character who is a tailor when farming this dungeon. There are a bunch of expensive tailoring patterns that can only drop if your character has Northrend tailoring learned, so make sure to bring a tailor when farming, and you have the extra chance for a bunch of those patterns. A lot of those are for shirts to learn, and a lot of collectors buy these. They have a decent sale rate, and some of them can even fetch like over 50,000 gold. It's kind of crazy. On top of that, look out for a bunch of weapons, shields, and the like, as that's the main transmog moneymakers in Wrath of the Lich King. Overall, very consistent farm dungeon. You know, even if you don't get the Battered Hilt, which is the main ticket item when farming here, you still get some nice items. And overall, I'm going to put it in... should I put it in the B or the A tier? I think I'll put it in the A tier. Alright, and coming up last, but certainly not least, we have the Scarlet Monastery. Now, the Scarlet Monastery is a very, very nice dungeon. You get an absolute ton of items if you're trying to fill out your auction house. I really recommend coming to Scarlet Monastery for that. As well as you have a nice amount of super rare items to look out for, and as well as that, there are a bunch of BOE blues that aren't super rares. You know, they're a bit rare, but nothing crazy to look out for as well. On top of that, you have some really nice sets to look out for, like the Pillagers, the Glimmering Mail, and the like, similar to Gnomergon's green loot pool. Overall, this dungeon is pretty solid. The runs are really quick too, which is nice, about 3.5 minutes or so with the speed set. So overall, I'm gonna put it at the A tier. Alright guys, this is my tier list, man. I'm probably going to get some hate in the comments. I feel really guilty about putting Dratheon Keep at the bottom, but I just got to be realistic with y'all, man. I mean, it's super RNG based. Overall, let me know if I got any absolute duds in terms of the rankings in the comments below. Let me know if I missed any dungeons you guys don't think I got. I'd certainly be interested to hear what you guys think about this ranking, and let me know if you want to see more content like tier list in the future. Maybe I could do it with like gathering farms or something else like that. I would definitely be interested to hear you guys' thoughts in the comments below. But with that being said, I really appreciate you guys taking the time to watch this video. Good luck with your auction house sales, and I'll see you guys in the next gold making video.